All right, we're live and in color. Welcome, welcome, welcome to everybody. Today's session is called Hit the High Notes, Tips for a Successful Interview. And we can't stress this enough here at MRS. We want our clients to be excellent interviewers, showing the world what our clients with disabilities can do in the world of work. So I want to thank everybody for your attendance today. Not just potential clients and customers, but also some of our job placement vendors we have here with us. My name is Zachary Tomlinson. I'm a vocational rehabilitation counselor with the Southeastern District. I'm right in Flint. And today, my co-facilitator is Miss Linda Watson, who is the manager of the Flint branch. Linda, you want to say hello real quick?
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
All right. We also have with us two sign language interpreters today. So let's say hello to Ms. Toy Bogan and Bethany James. We have both of them here with us today. All right. Now, if anybody would like to access the captioning feature, live transcription is available for those who want it. So you're going to click the live transcript button at the bottom of your screen. So yeah, as you look down, you're going to see live transcript. Just click on that and select the show subtitle or view full transcript button. So that's how you're going to access the transcript. And now also, if you have any questions during the presentation, there's a Q&A feature down at the bottom of your screen. So everybody, I think if you take a look, you can see it says Q&A. There's a 2 on there because I think somebody might have a question already. Boy, we got a hot live audience out there who's ready to go. Good. So if you've got any questions, yeah, look down at the bottom, type in a question, and I think one of us will get to it eventually. So yeah, it's a piece of cake. Just use that Q&A section down at the bottom. We want to let you know that this event is being recorded. So anything you say or do can be held against you, right? We got it live on recording here. So, but I think it's going to be good. It's going to be some good information. So if anybody misses it, we'll have it for record and anybody can get access to the knowledge we're going to be spreading here in the future. So one more time, I want to thank everybody for participating and attending today. And I'm going to pass it off to Linda to do some introductions.
Thanks so much, Zach. So today we are happy to have a number of business and community partners here with us that have generously donated their time and their talents to this webinar. So I'm going to give you a little bit of information on each one of them. Luella Sherman is an HR manager, has been for 26 years at Genesee Packaging here in Flint. She holds a bachelor's from U of M Flint and a master's from Baker College of Flint in business management, as well as a certification in HR administration from Saginaw Valley. She's active with various organizations, including being the chair of the Disability Works Committee, a member of the BRN through Michigan Works, and a board member at the Disability Network. She also has a strong commitment to the advancement of individuals with disabilities, veterans, and returning citizens. Dan Kuski, previously in corporate sales for Verizon Wireless, has experience working with C-level executives, collaborating with multiple organizations, and truly understanding how businesses make decisions. He transferred that experience to working on behalf of individuals with disabilities to find and maintain employment as the owner of his own business, Kuski Services. He has a skilled and dedicated team of job developers and coaches who help individuals with disabilities into successful employment. Ron Culver has 18 years of career development experience, including developing the first soft skills training series in Michigan in partnership with SEMCUP. Today, he provides career development services, including soft skills training, job placement, job coaching for MRS. He also provides a customer service skills training at his business, which is called The Marketplace in Livonia. It's a store that has leather accessories for men and women. Kim Foley is the Director of Recruiting at Flagstar Bank and has been with the bank since 2016. She has been an HR professional for over 20 years. She and her team of recruiters are committed to providing all candidates with an engaging candidate experience. She's been a member of Flagstar Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Talent Pillar since the program's inception. And last but certainly not least is Dina Deschong, is the program director for the Disability Network here in Flint. She's a lifelong resident of Mount Morris, a graduate of Beecher Schools, and holds degrees from the Detroit College of Business and Baker College of Flint. She's worked in employment services since 1998 in support of individuals with disabilities. She's responsible for developing new programming and directing a staff, a magnificent staff, I might add, to deliver information and referral advocacy, transition, peer support, and independent living. So now I'd like to turn it back to Zach, who's going to start our Q&A.
All right, so I want to ask, we've got a couple of employers here who are have some answers for us, but in today's market, what types of interviews can folks expect? And we're talking about things like in-person, virtual, whether it's Zoom or Microsoft Teams or just one of the many platforms out there, over the phone, maybe a job fair. There's just a lot of options. So what do you have experience with, and what would you tell potential candidates what they can expect? So let's start with Luella.
Thank you, Zach. So what to expect nowadays? I mean, when we look at October 2021, I feel like, in what I've seen and what I've done, I've been phone interviewing. We've been in person, of course, back to in person. During last year, 2020 was very difficult, and we really didn't do a lot of hiring because of the difficulties with the COVID pandemic and going on. It's much better now, as I was saying. So we do in-person interviews. I think that most people are going to expect that it is going to open back up to that. Job fairs, we're inundated right now as HR professionals with job fairs opportunities, and that enables us to be able to get a big group of people quickly if needed that way. So I would expect that there's going to be a lot of job fairs and interviews at job fairs, which, I actually, over the long period of time that I've been in HR, which is more than 30 years now, I have done interviews at a job fair, and they're difficult, but still in all, you can find some really good candidates that way. And I would expect anybody coming into a job fair to recognize that too, that it's something open and available to them. And when I interview, I always, in certain positions, most positions, I'm going to call you. So when we talk about a phone interview, there's always that first mini conversation for a job interview, that they're trying to get to know whether you're interested, whether I'm interested or not, and setting up the time for hopefully a face-to-face or a virtual, which I'm actually glad that I've never had to do a virtual interview, because I like the face-to-face. It's just, you get so much more from it. And so I think I'll stop at that just to say that I would expect that. And if you are interviewing, actually, I won't stop. If you are interviewing in person, I would say always find out what their policies are. For me, when I interview right now, I mask up, our social distancing still, and that's just precautionary measures, whether someone's vaccinated or not. We should do that. And job fairs, of course, the same way. And so we're still getting to a good place, but I think we still need to look at that end of it. And I don't want to get into the political end of vaccinations or not, but it's really just following a good process or protocols at this point in time.
Yeah. All right, well, thank you, Luella. We're going to head over to Dan.
Yeah, so, and thanks, Luella. I appreciate the information you shared there too, coming from your side of the aisle.
Thank you.
What I have seen is that all kinds of interviews are happening right now. So you're going to have phone screens. That's going to be around forever because it's just a good filtering process. But there are going to still be virtual interviews, but praise the Lord that there's actually in-person interviews happening now again too. And I agree with Luella. That's the best way to get to truly know someone because 80% of our communication is nonverbal, and you get to learn a lot just by being around someone. So I'd say all of them are going to happen. Be prepared for each kind because one can turn into the other. That's probably my contribution right here. A simple phone screen can turn into a virtual full-on interview real quick, especially if you're a highly qualified candidate. They could have, the director, whoever the hiring manager is, hop on right then, and it turns into a full-on interview. Also, when it comes to job fairs, right? I don't know if that's going to get into our next question or not, but with the job fairs, you want to, the main skill of going to a job fair when you're going to interview there is just be prepared because it could be an initial conversation, but it could be a full-on interview like Luella was talking about, and you might get hired on the spot. So just be prepared that it could be at any level and it could turn from one into the other.
All right, thanks. Yeah, and real quick, Ron, I saw you give a big nod when Dan mentioned the soft skills. You being the soft skills development guy, do you want to chime in? Do you want to say something here?
Oh, actually, I want to compliment Dan and Miss Luella on the response you're giving to the base because one of the things that we want our clients to know is the expectations of the employers. Now, just to piggyback off the job fair, and what I recommend to anyone who's looking for work, when you go to a job fair, go to your local Michigan Works Agency or any government agency related to career development. And I think there is a website where job fairs are posted in advance, sometimes 30, 60, 90 days in advance. I'm not sure where that website is, but what you get is a list of the employers that's going to be there. So part of being prepared before that job fair is to find the employers that you're interested in, because from the perception of the employer, they can kind of tell if you are wondering or just looking. But if you have applied and did your research on the employer and go face that employer, the communication and the conversation is going to be completely different. So that will stand you out in that arena, absolutely, but preparation is important.
Thanks, Ron. Linda?
Thanks so much, you guys, for providing that great information. So let's go on to another question. What should candidates do to really prepare for one type of interview over another type of interview? And I know you touched on this a little bit more, but let's go to Kim for that.
Okay, thanks, Linda. And Luella and Dan and Ron, you're all setting me up for a very easy transition to provide some information. So thank you. We at Flagstar have a little bit of a different model. Over the last 18 months, we have conducted probably 99% of our interviews via WebEx. This was a huge change for our organization. We were always huge proponents of meeting individuals in person, but I'm fortunate enough to work for an organization that's taken the health and safety of their employees very seriously. But this was a big change, not only for our candidates, but also for our recruiting team. So if I may, I'd like to speak to how individuals can prepare themselves for virtual interviews. All agreed, we'd rather be in the same room together, but I will have to say for an organization the size of Flagstar and other organizations that are similarly situated, virtual interviews will continue to be a very strong method of communicating and selecting candidates in the future. One of the first things I'd like to say when you're preparing for a virtual interview is try to become apprised of your technology beforehand. Is it using Teams? Is it using WebEx? Is it using Zoom? Make sure that you're aware of the technology that you're being asked to utilize. and really make sure that your connectivity in whatever space you're going to be conducting your interview is really viable for you. Make sure that your internet is set up properly. Make sure you have the appropriate audio working for you. So that's the first thing, is make sure you're aware of your technology. If you haven't been a participant in a virtual interview before, get some practice. Practice with a friend. Set up a Zoom conference and with friends and family, or an individual maybe that you're working with at MRS, and practice so that you're really comfortable and confident when you're in front of that camera. Once you've got that connectivity set up and you know what kind of technology you're using, make sure that you're presenting yourself in the best possible way that you can. Even though you're not in a room with someone, there's an expectation on the recruiters or hiring managers side that you're going to be in appropriate workplace attire, that your background is appropriate. Are you in a setting that is it quiet? Is there, you making sure there's no distractions, there's no noises behind you? Make sure that the lighting is good. Don't necessarily have a strong light behind you because it can kind of cast you in a shadow. You want to make sure that you're looking in the camera, and as much as you can, having eye contact with the individual that you're speaking with. Those are some of the things that I would say be mindful of when you're preparing yourself for that virtual interview. We all know it's different. It's not what we have experienced in the past. Another thing I would say is when you're preparing for a virtual or a WebEx interview, excuse me, is try to, as much as you can, have a natural conversation. There's going to be give and take. Don't worry if you two talk over each other. It's going to happen. There might be a lag in your connectivity. So one of you might be talking and your screen might freeze. Don't worry. It's going to happen to the recruiter or the hiring manager too. One of the best pieces of advice I can give you is relax, take a deep breath, and just realize that the person on the other side of that WebEx might just experience the same technical challenges that you do.
Thanks so
Hopefully
much.
that helps a little.
That does. Thank you so much. And see, we just talked over each other and we're
Yep.
totally fine.
We're fine.
I want to go back real quick because Ron mentioned the job fairs and where do you find those? So you can find those at mytalent.org, MITALENT.org. So I'm going to turn it back to Zach to go to our next question.
Yeah. All right. We're going to come to a couple of you folks with this next question is, what is the best way for candidates to showcase their skills during, these interviews with these questions? What's the best way for them to showcase their skills? And first, we're going to come to Ron with this one.
Okay. One of the ways to showcase your skills, well, again, the focus is pretty much, again, virtual and the telephone interview because of the pandemic. But what will actually make a client shine out in the interview process is understanding the need of their employer. Because initially, when you look for an opportunity and you look at the job description, which is vital and very important because that's going to establish if you qualify or not. So my recommendation will go back to the need of that employer, and that would be through the job description. So if you study the job description, then you can raise questions in the interview process to see how effective you can be and actually relate some of the prior experiences that you have that are contrary or likable to the job opportunity or responsibility that you're having now. So comparing and being excited and enthusiastic about the comparison as well, and good eye contact.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you. We're going to come back to Luella next.
Okay, same question. Actually, I totally agree with where Ron was going to, because I always feel like even if you don't have say it's an inventory or a warehousing position, but you don't really think you have that skill, that what does it define itself? So as you said, as Ron said, know what the job description is and be able to filter in, even if you don't have that skill, somewhere you have something that may fit it. If that, does that make sense? You know, I may not have ever worked in a warehouse, but I know how to count. I know that's silly, but still I know how to count. I know how to get to the places where I need. If you train me, I can do what you want me to do. So that enthusiasm to know that, but that's also know the company and know what you're going into that interview. That the biggest thing for me. If it says warehouse inventory on it, probably during your phone, if it's a phone interview, and even if it gets to the as much as a virtual or any other, you're still going to get a little bit of information before you go in there. Practice that. Practice what skill do I have that goes along with that, you know, what they're looking for, you know, and I'm hoping I'm making sense. But having a fact sheet is another really good thing to have, you know, because a fact sheet, and if you present it to them and you have one yourself, it's actually, and that's beyond your resume, because that can show them, well, you did this, this, and this. Oh yeah, that's kind of the similar. Can you explain that to me? As an interviewer, I may say, can you explain to me, you know, what you did here? Because, oh, all right, yeah, that is exactly one of the things that we're looking for in this person. So that's doing the homework, making sure you know what the company is and what they do. And of course, the job description or the job, I always say, if not the job description, the definition of what inventory, the definition of what shipping is. Maybe simple, but it may be a lot longer than what, you know, that you might have a skill that you don't even realize you have for that job.
Okay, before we jump back to Linda, Ron, I saw you put your hand up there, so go ahead real quick.
I just want to add a little bit on to what she said, and I totally agree. Since there's a quick focus on the manufacturing industry, as we all know that in that industry, everyone is trainable. But here's the key factor that I'm seeing that the manufacturing industry is having a problem: availability. The industry doesn't have the luxury to tailor a schedule. And it is the culture of the big three. It is the culture of the suppliers, anything associated, including transportation and warehousing. People are working a lot of hours. So to be a hero in the interview process, you got to have open availability, because you could be working. I've seen, and I've placed quite a few people, everybody's working 6-day work weeks, 12 to 14 hours a day. Are you committed to that? And that's the question you need to ask yourself. Because if you're available to that employer, when you speak your availability, you pretty much got the job, you know, but you got to follow through in retention as well.
All right, thanks, Rick.
Zach?
All right, Dan, go ahead. Then we got to come back to Linda for the next one. Go ahead.
Okay, I'll be very quick on this. I just thought it would help with for this particular question, because it kind of 3 and 4 kind of blend together, right? Our questions here. But when you say what's the best way to showcase your skills during the interview process, and it ties in with what Luella was saying with the fact sheet, but I like to call it, you do it with proof, all right? And so depending on what industry you're in, it might be called a portfolio, it might be called something else. But what you do is you bring samples of your work or samples of class projects that you've done. If you're in school and you're just getting started in your career, you assemble a portfolio or a list of things that you've done, maybe some letters of reference from people, because, you know, a resume says what you can do, but a portfolio proves it by showing the actual work that you've done. So if you're a carpenter, show some samples of the job. If you're a finance guy, show some samples of some budgets or things that you've done, things like that, right? So I do want to say that. And then also with what Luella was saying regarding she's talking about transferable skills, right? So something that you did over here that might not be that position title, but the things that you did over there can be applied over here. What I like to call it is that many specific skills have a foundation of a universal skill, right? And so that means that, so I'll give you an example and then I'll be done so we can get to the next question. But so you take someone who's been in customer service for years, right? But now they want to go into IT, right? So what do those two both have in common that are the root of customer service and IT? And the skill is problem solving, right? And so you take that skill that you developed in customer service and now you can apply it to IT. So that's how you talk to an employer. You try and think about, okay, what's the skill behind the skill that they're looking for that position? And have I done that in another position? I'm done.
Thanks so much for that, Dan. I appreciate all your guys' response for that. That was great. And it does really blend with this next question. But I'm also going to pull something out from the chat. Someone put a question in the chat. I'm going to kind of put these two together. So if someone's always had difficulties communicating how their skills would be a good fit for a job, what advice would you give them? We see this a lot with folks that we're working with. Sometimes they have difficulties really communicating how they are that best person for the job. And with that there's a question in the chat. What if someone simply has difficulties making eye contact as well during the interview? So I'm going to go to Kim first on this one, and then we'll bounce around a little bit.
Thanks, Linda. I am going to echo what Ron stated regarding knowing your job description. We all have difficulty, I'm going to say, tooting our own horn, right? We have to, as candidates, be able to market ourselves in the best possible way we can to the hiring managers and recruiters that we're working with. And Ron spoke perfectly to the fact that you need to know the job that you're interviewing for. And that is going to give you the comfort level and confidence to be able to speak to your own experience and skill set. I break it down, take notes, take that job description and pull it apart and match it up with your resume or your fact sheet that Luella was talking about, and put it together so that when you're in front of that recruiter and hiring manager and you're looking at the qualifications and requirements of that job, you can say, I'm looking at the qualifications of this role and I'm confident that my background and experience are a good match for this. And here's why. We're going to go point by point, and I'm going to be able to think back to what I've done on the job. You need to be able to speak to what your resume says, right? A resume is a wonderful snapshot of your employment history, but you need to make sure that you can speak to it very confidently. So that's the one thing I would say is we all have trouble, articulating at some point in time what it is about my background is going to make me the best person for this role. And the best way you can do that is really break it down and then bump it up against the job that you're applying for and that you really want to be considered for. The next thing I would say is practice again. Practice with your next door neighbor or your job coach or anybody that will listen. Practice in the mirror and frame it and reframe it until you're really comfortable and confident with what you're saying. And don't hesitate to really be open and confident about what you're stating. If you feel that you are really a good qualified candidate for that job, state it just that way. And that energy and that positivity, and as Ron said, that enthusiasm will come across. And as a hiring manager and as a recruiter, that's what we want to see. I think hopefully that answers the first question a little bit. And then Linda, the second part of the question again.
Sure. If someone, and this is really, we're kind of going rogue here, and it came out of the Q&A. I thought it fit well with this. So if someone's having difficulties during an interview, making eye contact, knowing how important we value eye contact in our society, what suggestions do you have for them?
I would say if you're comfortable, and MRS Associates, I'm going to rely on you for some help here too. As a recruiter and a hiring manager, being prepared and understanding how I can best communicate with you as a candidate will only make our conversation go better. So if you as a candidate are coming into a situation where you are comfortable letting the interviewer know, hey, I'm going to let you know this is a challenge that I might have. Don't, feel that I'm not engaged in the conversation if I'm looking to the side and I'm not looking directly at you. Again, nerves get the better of all of us at times, but if there's something specific during the interview process that you think it would help the interviewer communicate best with you, I would appreciate that as an interviewer. But, Zach and Linda and Gina, I think maybe you could probably provide some additional insight there as well.
Yeah, thanks so much. And we'll actually go to Gina for a little bit more on that.
Yes. So if you have trouble making eye contact, I always advise people, try to focus on maybe a point right over their shoulder or their forehead. As long as you're looking in their direction, sometimes that's all that's needed. You don't have to be staring intently into each other's eyes to get through the interview. But as long as you're looking at them, so look at a point right above their shoulder or on their forehead, you can get through it. And practicing in the mirror, like Kim said, I firmly believe that for any part of the interview, you always look at yourself in the mirror as you go through the questions. And that's just a good way, maybe put a dot on your mirror and try to focus on that dot. So you don't have to stare intently into their eyes, but just look in their general vicinity.
Thank you for that.
It does make perfect with an interview.
If I may too,
Ease some of that.
yeah, if I may add to all of that, I have corrective lenses. And even with my corrective lenses, sometimes when I am looking at somebody, I'm not looking at them. I'm looking over to the side of them. And they're doing this, and then my eyes are going a different way. So my point is that can happen, and it's all right to disclose that too, and anything, any kind of a something that you feel is a disability. I mean, I know I have an issue when I look someone straight in the face. Sometimes they don't think that I am, but I am, but it doesn't look like that. So it's all right. It happens.
That brings up a really good point about disclosure. And I know, Luella, that's a subject close to your heart. If you want to speak a moment on that, that would be great.
Well, I don't want to, it's a personal thing. Even in an interview, I interview, for most people that know me, I interview mostly informally, which basically means that, yes, I may be in business attire or whatever, but I'm going to try to get those soft skills out of you. Things that you should let somebody know. And it's not everybody interviews like that. And I get that, but that's hard for me to give advice to people that are looking for interviews. But I'm a full believer in disclosure. If there's a disability, if there's a situation, veterans, for instance, PTSD is rampant in veterans. And it's good to actually disclose that fact, I feel, that, you do have some symptoms of PTSD, and, because then that helps us. And I believe it was maybe Dan or maybe Ron said something really early on, is that, in order to help or in order to bring you in, I need to know about you, and with that, needing to know what I can do or what the company can do to accommodate you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. We encourage everyone listening to definitely work with their MRS counselor on disclosure for more guidance on that. We'll turn it back to Zach for the next question.
All right, yeah, and it's all kind of blending together here, but it's good stuff. So the question we had was, aside from job qualifications, what are some things that stand out to you, either positively or negatively, about candidates during interviews? Or what are those things that stick out to you positively or negatively during an interview? And we're going to welcome Gina back to the party again. So Gina, what sticks out to you, positive or negative, during interviews?
Well, actually, it's the same answer to both. It's attitude. So if you have a bad attitude, for example, do not talk negatively about your former employer.
Right.
You go into the interview and you have to put a positive twist on everything. I know it's hard if you've been released, if you've been fired, but that's why you have to prepare before the interview. Write out what you think the question could be and write out your response and practice in that mirror.
Mhm.
You know, and try to put a positive twist on everything. And you know, because your attitude comes through. If you aren't prepared, that also comes through.
Mhm.
If you haven't practiced or reviewed the question, they're going to know that. And a lack of confidence is bad in an interview. And there's a fine line between confidence and arrogance.
Ma'am.
You know, because we're taught not to be overly confident, but we want to have some confidence, but nobody wants that arrogant person who thinks they know everything. You can't tell me anything. I've done this before. Nobody wants that person. Nobody wants to hire that person. So it's okay to be confident, but that's another thing you should practice. Practice, look at yourself in the mirror, talk to your neighbor, talk to your spouse or a sibling, and how did that look? How was my body language? So it's the same answer, attitude.
All right, thank you, Gina. Let's come to Kim.
Gina, I agree with everything that you just said.
Mm-hmm.
Those were my notes almost to a T. I'm going to look at this from, we'll call them red flags, okay? And one of the first things on our list is, how did the individual speak to their past employer experience? Gina, you're absolutely right. If you're not able to say anything positive, don't say a whole lot. Just say, wasn't an opportunity that worked out for me. I'm looking for a new experience.
That's good.
Yeah, you know, I think that's a very, very key. Attitude, enthusiasm, positivity, level of engagement, those are all incredibly important. Another thing I will say is, know the job that you're applying to. I can't tell you how many recruiters have come to me and said, I just got off 6 phone screens and only one person knew who Flagstar was and knew what job they were applying for. Make sure you get the employer's name right. Don't call us Flagstaff, call us Flagstar. Make sure you know who you're applying for. If you're applying for 12 different employers, have some mechanism for tracking who you spoke to, what the recruiter's name was, and what the job is. Take down the date that you spoke with that person. Try to keep yourself as organized as you can. I know it's hard when you're dealing with multiple phone interviews and pre-screens and you've got 6 different people you're talking to, but make sure that your recruiter knows that you know the employer that you're applying for. And I think, Luella, you're going to echo that
Yep.
sentiment. So I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, just really briefly, hopefully. If you haven't noticed, I talk a lot, but Kim is absolutely right. I mean, in the manufacturing industry, people feel like, oh, it's just another person, another manufacturing company called, but know what they do, know their name. Our name is the Genesee Group, doing business as Genesee Packaging. Pretty much the same company. That it is the same company, founded in 1979. If I give you a call and say, hey, can you come in for an interview for this job at our company, it would behoove you even though it's manufacturing, maybe to go look us up to find out what we do if you don't know who we are.
Exactly.
Be prepared. And
Mhm.
yeah, because it is, I get those sometimes where, well, I have gotten a lot of that where people are, they don't even remember what they're, who they talk to. So I'm like you, if you're looking for a job and it's 5, 6, 10 different companies, whatever it is, write down when and where's and what and
Mhm.
who called you. You know, they're more likely here, they're going to know it was me. But on the other hand, still, it's very disconcerting when you're not prepared in that respect. Yes.
All right, thank you, Luella. Dan, we got a second for you, then we're gonna come back to Linda.
Yeah, tiny little tip on this that will help with the preparation for the interview that that Kimberly and Luella was talking about. Talk with someone who's already in that position at that company. So get a day in the life experience from them. That'll help you out a ton in the interview. It's LinkedIn can help with that. Some of your own personal network can help with that. And sometimes you can even just call the company and ask, but that's a good way to go.
Thanks, Dan. Let's head back to Linda for our next question.
Okay, so let's drill down a little bit more, guys. What are the top questions that any candidate, no matter what your industry is, they must be prepared to answer in almost any interview? And for that, let's start with Ron.
Okay. There's 2 or 3 that I would recommend, and they're classified as what I consider them being in the industry. They might sound simple, but they're some of the most powerful questions you can ask in an interview. One of them is, tell me about yourself. That's one of the questions. Another one is, what do you know about this company? Okay, how did you find out about us? It's an open-ended question for you to begin to communicate, and it is one of the most pivotal moments where you can set a pace in the whole interview process based on that response, because that's what employers are looking for. How did you get here? How did you prepare for this opportunity? And so they won't come out and say that exactly, but again, an open-ended question, tell me about yourself. It is not personal, but what it is, it allows you the opportunity to go back and review that job description as we talked about and begin to say, well, you know, I have some skills and experience that can accommodate that opportunity. It also allows you the opportunity to talk about the history of the company. That validates that you've done some form of research, as the panel has mentioned before. It's very important. You need to understand what you're getting yourself into. And in order to do that, you do research. Look at their goals, look at their missions. And one of the open-ended questions that you can ask an employee in the beginning, why is this position open? When it gets to that point, it helps you to determine if this is a new opportunity or if someone moved on and got promoted. It gives you further information in the process. So I'll turn it over to someone else.
Thanks. You know what, I'm going to actually open this for the panel because you guys have been jumping in. So is there any other top questions that you feel like maybe Ron just didn't hit on, but you hit on a lot, and I appreciate that. Gina.
Well, first I want to say, Ron, tell me about yourself. I think that's the hardest question. Even at this point in my life, it's the hardest question. But why do you want to work here? Why do you want to work here? Tell me something that you're really good at. And then the reverse to that is, tell me something about yourself you would like to work on. And that's another way to showcase your skills for that job. You know, I'm really good at technology or whatever. So, but that question, tell me about yourself, I would say that's probably asked in 100% of interviews. That is the hardest question to answer.
Thank you for that. Go ahead, Dan.
I'll chime in on one that may pertain more to our customer group too, right? But why is there a gap in your employment? Right. So this is the question that everyone's afraid to answer. They don't know how to answer, whether it's through having a disability and losing a job, or through being incarcerated, substance abuse. There's all kinds of things that could happen why there's a gap in your employment. So you have to be prepared to answer that question. And there's different philosophies and ways to answer that question, but I'll give my 2-second version of it. So let's say you had criminal history, right? And you committed an offense and you went away for several years. You own it. You fully own what happened, and you explain what's different now and why that won't happen again. Okay?
Yes.
So if you can truly say that, because every interview question is a form of 2 questions. Can you do the job, and can I trust you?
Mhm.
Everything else is a derivative of that, right? And so if you can
Right.
demonstrate trust by talking about something that could potentially cost you the job opportunity now, that's going to let the employer know they can trust you when you're in the job. So this is for some people who, they're struggling like, hey, I was in jail for 5 years for heroin or, or whatever, right? You can answer that question. And the same thing with your disability. What you have to answer is what's different now. And so like if you're out of work for 10 years, but now there's a new medication that came out that treats your disability. And so now you're able to go back into the workforce. You explain that. You explain what's changed in your life that makes the last 10 years, like now is different than 10 years ago.
All right.
Thank you.
Can I add a tad footnote to that, please? This
Yep.
is really important that our customers who are out here listening to this is a legal issue. Before you disclose anything personal in an interview, make sure that an application has been filled out.
That's a great point.
Because,
That's a great point.
yeah, because, well, actually it is the law, that an employer cannot ask, and actually it's classified as a personal question. What is your religious affiliation? Anything personal cannot be asked in the interview process unless it's on the application, because technically the application is a legal document. I just want to interject on that part.
Yeah, that's a great point, especially when we talk about disclosure during interviews. And if you as the candidate bring something up, you're allowed to do that before you sign an application, but you really have to have great guidance on how you're going to do that and why you're going to do that.
Exactly, because the question will come up and, well, it normally is on the application. So, there's some disclosure already through the application process, and then they can take it further. But besides that, as stated, definitely get some advice related to your disability. You definitely want to be careful that your disclosure is kept private as well, because not only are they looking at you as a candidate, but you're looking to be comfortable in that working environment. So part of that initiative is to understand that, is that environment going to support my disability or whatever, has hindered that person from moving on in their career.
Thank you, Ron. That's great information. So I'm going to turn it back to Zach. We're going to wrap things up. We just have 2 more questions. Luella, did you want to add something to that?
I did, actually. I mean, Ron's, he is absolutely right. But when you see a resume with gaps in it, and you need to get an answer from the gaps, it's disclosing what you should be disclosing anyways. You're going to be asked a behavioral question, some sort of a behavioral question, because that's just a pat way of interviewing. And we all touched on that as well. But I just want to make sure that most interviews, when I interview, it's an interview between me and that person. And there are certain things that are said in that interview that I'm not disclosing even to, the owner of the company, unless I'm saying we need to accommodate, this would be a good thing to do, whatnot. I'm just trying to make sure, because nothing in an interview situation, I do not want to be blindsided when I say, yeah, I'm going to give you this job. And then you start and, all heck breaks loose because we didn't know something we should have known, so.
Right.
Right. Whether on an application or not, because in general, any question, like you said, that's asked is on that application. So.
Right. Thanks, Luella. We're down to our last 9
Sorry.
minutes. So we're going to try to squeeze in these last 2 questions. So we're going to jump back to Gina, and I'm going to ask you, what separates a good answer from a bad one?
That the confidence that you let them see or don't see in some cases, and that you have some knowledge about what you're speaking on. If you have manufacturing experience, you should be able to explain that in the interview. You know, if you're interviewing with Luella, you should be able to explain your experience in an interview. Does the answer ring true? When I'm interviewing someone, you have to ask yourself that. You know, when you're looking at their resume and they give you an answer and you think, that just doesn't sound right somehow. You know, does it ring true? Do they have, if they told you they have a plan, how is that related to their plan, to their work history? So you want to be able to believe everything someone you're interviewing is telling you the truth. We all know there's a face you put on in the interview, but we want to be able to believe you. And so your answers should, you know, showcase that you're telling the truth, that you're able to talk about your own experience.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
Right.
Gina, I'm
Thank
going to
you.
say too, I'll just jump in real quick. I said honesty. So
Yeah,
same thing.
honestly, yeah.
Yeah, does anybody else want to, if they could, give their quick 20-second response so
Yeah.
we can get back to Linda for last? All right, Dan, I'm counting you down.
Yep. Answer the question that's being asked.
Yes.
So many times an employer is asking you a specific question and people give a hypothetical or generic answer.
Yep.
So tell me about a time you made a mistake is not tell me what you would do if you made a mistake.
Right.
Right. Exactly.
Thanks, Dan. Anybody else
You
got a
have to
quick
listen.
answer? Oh, good. Right. Kim or Ron, anybody else?
I'll just echo a sincere and honest response.
Mhm.
Make sure again that you can speak to your resume, be as open as you can, but honesty and sincerity and accountability are things that employers are looking for, personal accountability.
All right.
Thank you
And,
so much.
you know,
Oh, go ahead, Ron. Sorry.
oh, one of the criteria is that an employee is looking at is character to fit in their work environment. You know, so that is a very important tool and a final summation of the recruiting process. Would this person be a good fit? Would they get along? Well, I encourage the answers, the good answers involve us and we versus me. The more I hear about me, myself, and I, the more you by yourself. So think about again their need and what I can do to accommodate that need so we together can be successful.
Mhm.
So utilizing we versus me will get you in the door a little bit further.
All right,
Like
thanks,
that, Ron.
Ron. Linda, can we squeeze in one more, you think?
Yes, we can. You know, I'm just going to ask you guys about parting words of wisdom. I think it'd be best if we kind of hit on every person, tips, common mistakes, something like that. So I'm just going to go in order, and Dan, you are up first.
Okay, thank you. I'll try to be very succinct. So one of the things, common mistakes that are made in interviews is turning weaknesses into strengths, right? Because an interviewer can see right through that and it's kind of obnoxious. So just be honest about your weakness and what you're doing to overcome it, right? And give a specific example. Another quick thing, and we all talked about character and integrity here, is don't blame shift. So when they ask you about a mistake, don't say, well, I made this mistake because my boss did this or that. Like, fully own it, right? If it's your mistake, it's yours. And I would say, ask good questions at an interview. You are interviewing that company, and you also want to ask questions about who's involved in the process and what the process is, so that you can be intentional and active and not just passively waiting for the company to call you back. And then there's so many good things. I'm going to take up all the time. I'm going to turn it on to someone else. Sorry.
Thanks, Dan.
All right, why don't we go to Gina?
I have a list of 12 myself, but so one thing is when they ask you in an interview, if you have any questions, please have a question.
Mhm.
Have a question. And when you do research about a company, you're going to have questions, but make sure when you ask the question, it's not something they've already covered in the interview.
Thank you for that. How about you, Kim?
Yeah.
In today's new world, one of the most important things that my team needs to know is, do you really know what kind of an environment you want to work in? We're hiring people remotely, full-time, hybrid, which is both working from home and coming into the office, or working in an office space. You need to be very honest and look to yourself before you go into that interview. Have an awareness about what type of environment that employer is looking to bring people into, and then be very honest with the employer about where you're going to be most successful. If you can't work in a remote setting because you really know I'm going to need to be in an environment with people in order to be successful, then that's the kind of job you need to apply for. Conversely, if you are an independent worker, you can drive yourself, you can get yourself up every day, and you can sit in your basement like I am today, and you can get your work done independently, then you can work remotely. Maybe you want both, but I would just speak to the fact that employers are really in a new situation these days, and it's really important for you to be open and honest with yourself so you can make that decision before you go into the interview.
Thank you. How about you, Luella?
Pardon me, 1 minute. I echo what everybody has said, but in the manufacturing industry, production in particular, you know, that part, packaging, warehousing, we don't have the luxury of being hybrid in any situation.
Sure.
Most all of our jobs are. So, I mean, I think that that's a great question to ask. But other than that, yeah, when can you start is usually a really good question. What are you interested in? I think somebody already said that. I said, what are you interested in? What do you want to do? I always ask the question, I know it sounds silly, but we're looking for somebody who wants a family or a new family, whatever. Are you looking, you know, what are you looking for? And that goes back to that culture situation and how you view. We view ourselves, we're a small, mid-sized company, and I always look to see, does that person, will they fit in this culture that we have? Sister, mother, brother, father figures along the way. And Gina said it, and I believe Dan's me, you know?
Thank you so much. Ron, you get like 30 seconds, and then I'm going to thank everybody and kick everybody out virtually.
Okay, one of the tools in the interview process that I would encourage anyone from any level is to take a notepad. And that's that employer, may I take notes in the interview? Because we all don't remember everything, yours truly included. We don't remember everything, but high points are very important. Also, the final advice that I would give is the follow-up behind the interview. In most cases in manufacturing and skilled trade, you don't do a thank you letter. I still say a thank you letter in form of an email is important. Get contact information from that interviewer. Send in a thank you letter highlighting those most important points that you all agreed upon or even laughed about, because that represents a idea of your character, how it could be in the workplace. So if you all are agreeing and having fun, highlight that in the thank you letter. It is a very powerful follow-up. It could be the deciding factor between two candidates.
Thank you. That is the perfect way to end this presentation.
Yes.
I just want to thank everyone today who participated. We appreciate the audience being there. A special shout out again to our interpreters and to my co-facilitator, Zach. But a great, big, heartfelt thank you to all of our panelists who have dedicated again their time and their talents to be here with us today. Thank you so much, everybody. We wish you a wonderful and safe weekend.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye
you.
now.
Bye.
Bye-bye.